The morning sun peeked through the windows of Joey's diner, casting warm strips of light across the checkered floor tiles. The smell of fresh coffee and sizzling bacon filled the air as Maya balanced 3 heavy plates along her arm. She'd done this dance countless times over the past 15 years, weaving between tables, dodging other servers, all while keeping the plates steady as a rock. "Order up for table 6, called out Pete from the kitchen window, his voice barely rising above the cheerful buzz of the morning crowd. Maya nodded, her silver-streaked dark hair caught in the sunlight as she delivered the current round of plates to her waiting customers. The diner was packed, just like every other morning. Business people grabbed quick bites before heading to their offices, retired folks gathered for their daily coffee meetups, and families with sleepy kids filled the booths near the windows. Maya's hands moved with practiced grace, refilling coffee cups and jotting down orders in her worn notepad. These same hands once created very different kinds of magic. If you looked closely, you might notice how her fingers sometimes tapped against her serving tray, playing invisible melodies only she could hear. Those fingers had once danced across piano keys in concert halls, drawing tears and standing ovations from audiences who came to hear classical masterpieces. "Could I get some more syrup, please?" asked a young mom trying to manage 2 squirming kids in a corner booth. Maya smiled warmly, already reaching for the syrup dispenser she'd tucked into her apron pocket. She'd learned to anticipate these requests long ago. "Of course, honey. And would the little ones like some more apple juice?" The mom's grateful smile was answer enough. Between orders, Maya caught fragments of conversations floating around the diner. 2 elderly men argued good-naturedly about baseball scores at the counter. A group of office workers discussed their upcoming presentation while picking at their hash browns. A young couple sat in comfortable silence, sharing sections of the morning newspaper. These were her people now, so different from the well-dressed concert audiences of her past life. The weight of her serving tray reminded her of sheet music, each plate a different note to be delivered at just the right moment. The kitchen's rhythmic clatter of pots and pans became her backing orchestra. She'd found an unexpected harmony in this place, though it was nothing like the life she'd imagined for herself back in music school. "Hey Maya, your regulars are here," called out Diane, another waitress, pointing to table 12. Maya looked over to see the morning bridge club settling into their usual spot. 4 retired teachers who'd been coming to the diner every Tuesday for as long as she could remember. They ordered the same breakfast every time: 2 veggie omelets, 1 breakfast sandwich, and 1 plate of whole wheat pancakes. As she approached their table, her mind drifted to the baby grand piano sitting in the Grand Hotel's lobby across the street. During her breaks, when her feet ached and her serving tray felt especially heavy, she would sometimes slip over there. The hotel manager had noticed her playing one quiet afternoon and, instead of asking her to leave, had offered her an open invitation to play during their afternoon tea service. "Earth to Maya," teased Mrs. Thompson, one of the bridge club ladies, snapping her back to the present. Lost in those musical thoughts again, Maya felt her cheeks warm slightly. They'd discovered her secret talent months ago when they'd spotted her playing at the hotel. Now they often requested specific pieces for her next hotel performance, keeping a running list in their bridge notebooks. The morning rush continued its familiar pattern, but there was music in every moment if you knew where to look. In the gentle clink of coffee cups against saucers, in the synchronized movements of the kitchen staff, in the rising and falling conversations of customers starting their days. Maya had learned that sometimes life's sweetest melodies could be found in the most unexpected places, even in the humble symphony of a busy diner at breakfast time. The afternoon lull at Joey's diner always came like clockwork. As the lunch crowd thinned out, Maya wiped down tables and reorganized the salt and pepper shakers, her mind drifting to the magnificent piano across the street. The Grand Hotel's lobby had become her sanctuary during these quiet moments, a place where she could reconnect with the part of herself that still lived in music. Today, the sun streamed through the hotel's tall windows, casting golden light on the polished black surface of the baby grand piano. Maya glanced at her watch. She had exactly 27 minutes left on her break. Slipping off her comfortable serving shoes, she pulled the small pair of flats from her bag that she kept just for these moments. Her colleagues often teased her about being so particular about her piano shoes, but she knew that every detail mattered when it came to music. The hotel lobby was peaceful at this hour. A few business travelers tapped away on laptops, while an elderly couple dozed in the plush armchairs near the fireplace. Mr. Patel, the hotel manager, gave her a warm nod from behind the front desk. He discovered her playing one quiet afternoon 6 months ago, when she thought no one was around. Instead of asking her to leave, he'd surprised her by requesting his favorite Beethoven piece. Maya's fingers found the keys like old friends. She started with something gentle, a piece she'd composed herself that blended classical training with the everyday sounds of the diner. The soft melody carried hints of clinking coffee cups and morning chatter, woven together with fragments of Mozart. A few hotel guests looked up from their phones, their faces softening as the music filled the space. "You never told us you could play like that." The voice startled Maya mid-phrase. She turned to find Lily and Rose, her fellow waitresses from the diner, standing near the piano. They must have followed her during their own breaks, curious about where she disappeared to each day. Maya felt her cheeks flush. She'd kept her musical background quiet, not wanting to seem like she thought herself above her diner family. "It's just something I do to relax," she said softly, but Lily wasn't having it. "Just to relax? That's like saying Michael Jordan just shot hoops to unwind." Rose chimed in. "Why aren't you playing concerts or something?" The familiar weight of old dreams and past decisions settled in Maya's chest, but she managed a smile. Life had other plans. "Besides, I love working at the diner with you all." As if on cue, the hotel's afternoon tea service began. Elegant carts, loaded with tiny sandwiches and pastries, rolled out as well-dressed guests started to arrive. Mr. Patel approached the piano, his eyes twinkling. "Would you mind playing for our tea service today?" The usual pianist called in sick. Maya glanced at her watch. Her break was almost over. But before she could respond, Lily was already pulling out her phone. "I'll call Pete and tell them we're switching shifts. You have to do this." The next hour passed like a dream. Maya's repertoire flowed from light classical pieces to gentle jazz standards, her music becoming the perfect accompaniment to the clinking of fine china and murmured conversations. She noticed some of her regular diner customers had wandered in, ordering tea just to watch her play. Mrs. Lee, who always ordered the same breakfast special, was dabbing her eyes with a napkin after a particularly moving rendition of Moon River. When the tea service ended, Maya found herself surrounded by her diner family, not just Lily and Rose, but Pete from the kitchen, and even Joey himself had come to watch. Their faces glowed with pride and something else. Understanding, perhaps, of the layers that made up their friend and colleague. "You've been holding out on us," Joey said with a gentle smile. "Maybe we should get a piano for the diner." Walking back across the street to finish her shift, Maya felt lighter somehow. The gap between her two worlds, the pianist she had been and the waitress she had become, felt a little smaller. Her serving pad and pen waited at the diner, but now her colleagues saw them for what they really were. Just another kind of instrument in the orchestra of her life. The Tuesday morning rush was in full swing when Mr. Lee walked into Joey's diner. He always sat at the same corner table, ordered the same breakfast, black coffee and wheat toast with a side of fresh fruit, and spent exactly 45 minutes reading his newspaper before heading out. But today was different. Today, his weathered hands held sheet music instead of the morning paper. Maya noticed the change immediately. After 15 years of serving customers, you develop a sixth sense about these things. She grabbed the coffee pot and made her way to his table, trying to ignore the flutter of curiosity in her stomach. The sheet music wasn't just any piece. It was Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, a piece she had performed countless times in another life. "Just the usual today?" she asked, filling his cup with the precision that came from years of practice. Mr. Lee looked up, his eyes twinkling behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Actually, I wanted to talk to you about something." He carefully laid out the sheet music on the table, smoothing a dog-eared corner. "I heard you playing at the Grand Hotel yesterday." Maya's hand trembled slightly as she set down the coffee pot. Word about her playing had spread through the neighborhood like wildfire since her impromptu tea service performance. Some regular customers now called her the piano waitress, a nickname that made her both proud and uncomfortable. "I used to teach music at the conservatory," Mr. Lee continued, stirring his coffee thoughtfully. "Now I help organize concerts for the Children's Hospital downtown. We have an event coming up next month, a fundraiser for their music therapy program." He paused, looking at Maya with gentle determination. "We need a pianist." The breakfast rush faded into background noise as Maya processed his words. Through the diner's windows, she could see the Grand Hotel's elegant facade, where just yesterday she had felt the familiar joy of keys beneath her fingers. But performing at a real concert, that was different. That was stepping back into a world she'd left behind for good reasons. "I don't know," she started, but Mr. Lee held up his hand. "Just listen first. These kids at the hospital. Music is sometimes the only thing that makes them smile. We're not looking for perfection. We're looking for heart." He pulled out a photo from his wallet, showing a small group of children gathered around a piano, their faces lit up with joy despite the medical equipment surrounding them. The image stirred something deep in Maya's chest. She remembered why she'd fallen in love with music in the first place, not for the applause or recognition, but for moments like these, when notes could transform ordinary spaces into something magical. A crash from the kitchen snapped her back to reality. "Order up," Pete's voice called out. Maya glanced at her other tables, where coffee cups needed refilling and breakfast orders waited to be taken. This was her life now, reliable, steady, meaningful in its own way. "I'll need to think about it," she said finally. Mr. Lee nodded, understanding in his eyes. "The concert's in 4 weeks. Here's my card." He slipped it under the sheet music. "And Maya, sometimes the best music comes from people who have lived real life, who know what it means to work hard, to struggle, to serve others." Throughout her shift, Maya found herself humming the nocturne as she worked. Her regulars noticed. The morning bridge club ladies exchanged knowing looks, and Mrs. Chen, who always ordered extra crispy bacon, asked if she was working on something special. By closing time, the sheet music Mr. Lee had left was worn from being folded and unfolded so many times. Maya sat at an empty booth, sipping lukewarm coffee and staring at the notes that seemed to dance on the page. Lily dropped into the seat across from her, untying her apron after a long day. "You're going to do it, aren't you?" she asked, not really a question. Maya looked up at her friend, seeing the same encouragement she'd found in Mr. Lee's eyes, in the faces of her regular customers, in the photo of those children at the hospital. "Maybe," she whispered, but her fingers were already tapping out the rhythm on the table's surface, muscle memory awakening like a long-lost friend. "Maybe it's time to play again." The old keyboard sat in the corner of Maya's tiny apartment, dust gathering on its keys. She'd bought it years ago at a garage sale, telling herself it was just to keep her fingers limber. Now, in the pre-dawn quiet before her morning shift, she pulled off the sheet that covered it and plugged it in. The soft hum of electronics filled the room as she pressed middle C, testing if it still worked. 3 weeks until the charity concert. The thought made her stomach flutter as she began her morning scales. Outside, the city was just waking up, garbage trucks rumbling past, early birds chirping, the occasional car heading to work. Maya's fingers moved automatically, muscle memory taking over despite the years away from serious practice. The cheap keyboard's touch was nothing like the grand piano at the hotel, but it would have to do. she couldn't exactly practice there during tea service every day. Between her regular shifts at the diner and picking up extra hours to cover for Lily's vacation, finding practice time was like trying to catch rain in a coffee cup. Her phone alarm buzzed, 5:45 a.m. Time to get ready for work. Maya ignored it, pushing through another page of the Chopin piece. The notes were coming back to her, but something felt off. Her hands remembered the technical parts, but the music felt stiff, mechanical. Like a recipe followed exactly but missing that special ingredient that makes it memorable. At the diner that morning, everything seemed to go wrong. She mixed up orders for the first time in months, pouring orange juice instead of coffee, bringing scrambled eggs to a table that ordered over easy. The regular customers noticed. She could see it in their concerned glances. "You look tired, honey," Mrs. Chen said gently as Maya refilled her coffee cup with shaking hands. Those early morning practices taking their toll. Word had spread about the upcoming concert, and now the whole diner felt invested in her performance. The pressure to not let them down added another weight to her shoulders. During her break, she slipped into the back alley behind the diner, leaning against the brick wall. The sound of dishes clattering and Pete singing off-key in the kitchen drifted through the back door. These were the sounds she knew now, the rhythm of her daily life. What made her think she could step back into that other world, even for one night? Her hands were different now, slightly rougher from years of carrying hot plates and wiping down tables. They knew the weight of coffee pots and the texture of laminated menus better than they knew Chopin. A memory flashed through her mind. Her old piano teacher saying, "Music isn't about perfect hands. It's about bringing your whole life to the keys." Back inside, the lunch rush was building. Maya tied her apron back on, tucking her order pad into the pocket. As she moved between tables, she started hearing the music differently. The clatter of forks against plates became percussion. The murmur of conversations merged into a flowing harmony. And somewhere in this everyday symphony, she found the missing ingredient she'd been looking for in her morning practice. That evening, after her shift, she stayed late to help Pete clean the grill. He noticed her humming the nocturne as she worked. "You know what your problem is," he said, scrubbing at a stubborn spot. "You're trying to play like the person you used to be, but that's not who you are anymore." Maya stopped wiping down the counter, letting his words sink in. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you're not just a pianist now. You're someone who knows what it means to work hard, to serve others, to keep going when things get tough. Put that in your music." He shrugged, as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. "Play like the person you are today." That night, Maya sat at her keyboard again, but this time she didn't start with scales. Instead, she closed her eyes and let her hands tell their own story. One of early mornings and late nights, of coffee cups and kind words, of dreams set aside, and maybe, just maybe, dreams reborn. The Chopin piece flowed differently now, touched by everything she'd lived through, every table served, every smile given, every moment that had brought her to this point. The music wasn't perfect, but it was honest. And maybe, she thought as the last notes faded into the quiet apartment, that was exactly what Mr. Lee had meant about playing with heart. The morning started like any other at Joey's diner. Maya balanced plates of pancakes and eggs, refilled coffee cups, and exchanged friendly words with her regulars. 2 weeks until the charity concert, and she'd finally found her rhythm. Practicing before dawn, working her shifts, and playing at the hotel during breaks. Everything was falling into place. Until it wasn't. The crash from the kitchen wasn't the usual clatter of pots and pans. It was followed by silence, the kind that makes everyone's heart stop. Maya rushed through the swinging doors to find Joey, the diner's owner, slumped against the stainless steel prep table, his face pale and sweaty. "Someone call an ambulance." Pete's voice cracked as he held Joey upright. Maya's hands shook as she dialed 911. Her mind racing between vital signs she needed to report and tables she'd left unfinished. The breakfast crowd watched through the kitchen window, coffee cups forgotten, as paramedics arrived and whisked Joey away on a stretcher. Hours later, the news spread through the diner like spilled coffee. Joey had suffered a heart attack. He was stable, thank goodness, but would need several weeks of recovery. His daughter, Anna, who helped with the books on weekends, gathered everyone in the dining room after closing. "Dad's going to be okay," she announced, her voice trembling slightly. "But he needs complete rest. No work, no stress, doctor's orders." She looked around the room, meeting each person's eyes. "We need to keep this place running for him. He'd be heartbroken if anything happened to the diner." The staff exchanged worried looks. Joey was the heart of the place. He ordered supplies, handled scheduling, managed the finances. Anna could handle the books, but she had a full-time job in the city. They needed someone who knew the diner inside and out. "Maya should do it," Lily spoke up suddenly. "She's been here longest, knows all the regulars, and can handle anything." Others nodded in agreement, and Maya felt her carefully balanced world start to tilt. I don't know," she stammered, thinking of the concert, the practice hours she still needed. But looking at Joey's empty office, his coffee cup still sitting on the desk where he'd left it that morning, she knew what she had to do. The next few days blurred together. Maya learned to juggle ordering forms between taking orders, calculated payroll during her breaks instead of playing at the hotel, and stayed late every night to make sure everything was ready for the next day. Her keyboard gathered dust again, the chop and piece half remembered in snatches of melody that played in her head while she worked. 5 days before the concert, Mr. Lee stopped by during the afternoon lull. He found Maya at the counter, surrounded by invoices and supplier catalogs. "We missed you at tea time," he said gently. "The hospital called to confirm the program details." Maya's stomach clenched. "About that," she began, but Mr. Lee held up his hand. "I heard about Joey," he said. "The whole neighborhood's talking about how you've stepped up to keep this place going." He looked around the diner, taking in the regular customers, the busy kitchen, the staff moving efficiently through their routines. "You know, running a place like this, it's its own kind of symphony." A coffee cup clattered in its saucer, and somewhere in the kitchen, Pete started humming as he worked the grill. Maya listened, really listened, to the familiar sounds. "But the concert," she said softly. "I haven't practiced properly in days. I can't let those kids down." Mr. Lee smiled, pulling something from his coat pocket, a photograph from the children's hospital. A young patient sat at a small keyboard, her face full of joy despite the IV lines in her arm. "You know what this little girl told me? She said she wants to learn piano so she can play for her nurses. Not because they'd be a perfect audience, but because they take care of her every day, and music is her way of taking care of them back." Maya felt tears prick at her eyes as she looked at the photo. She thought about Joey, about the diner family, about all the different ways people take care of each other. About how running the diner wasn't just about keeping a business alive. It was about preserving a place where people felt at home. "Maybe," she said slowly, "there's more than one way to make beautiful music." The evening of the charity concert arrived with a mix of autumn rain and golden sunset. Maya stood in the diner's bathroom, changing from her waitress uniform into a simple black dress she bought years ago for a cousin's wedding. Her hands smelled of coffee and dish soap, no matter how many times she'd washed them. "You look beautiful," Lily said, helping her pin up her hair. "Like a real concert pianist." Maya caught her reflection in the mirror, waitress turned restaurant manager turned performer. Her diner name tag was still pinned to her uniform hanging on the door. She'd need it for tomorrow morning's shift. "I haven't practiced enough," she whispered, the worry finally spilling out. Between managing the diner and visiting Joey in the hospital, she'd barely touched a piano in the past week. The piece was there in her head, in her fingers, but would it be enough? The staff had rallied around her. Pete was handling the evening rush alone, telling her, "You've got bigger fish to fry tonight, boss." Regular customers had been slipping her encouraging notes all week. Even Mr. Peddle from the Grand Hotel had sent over a good luck card. The Children's Hospital Auditorium was only a 15-minute drive away, but Maya felt like she was crossing an ocean. Lily insisted on driving, chattering about everything and nothing, keeping Maya's mind from spinning out of control. They arrived to find the place already buzzing with activity. Parents helped children in wheelchairs find their seats. Medical staff in scrubs mixed with people in evening wear. Near the stage, Mr. Lee was arranging programs with shaking hands. This concert meant as much to him as it did to the kids. The backstage area was small, just a curtained-off corner with a few chairs. Maya peeked through the curtain and saw her diner family filing in. Pete still in his kitchen whites, Anna supporting her father Joey, who'd insisted on leaving the hospital for this one night. They sat next to the bridge club ladies, who'd brought handmade signs like they were at a sports game. A small hand tugged at Maya's dress. She looked down to find a little girl in a wheelchair, the same one from the photograph Mr. Lee had shown her. "Are you the piano lady?" the girl asked, her eyes bright despite her pale face. "The one who plays at the hotel." Maya knelt down beside her. "Yes, that's me. I'm also a waitress at Joey's Diner." The girl's face lit up. "Really? My mom says waitresses work really hard. Is it hard to do both?" Before Maya could answer, a nurse appeared to wheel the girl to her seat. "Good luck, piano waitress lady," the child called over her shoulder. Those words echoed in Maya's mind as she waited for her turn to perform. The previous acts, a local choir, a young violinist, a guitar duo, felt distant, like music from another room. Her hands moved silently through the piece, muscle memory mixed with newer rhythms learned from years of balancing plates and pouring coffee. Finally, Mr. Lee was announcing her name. Maya walked to the grand piano, its polished surface reflecting the stage lights. As she sat down, she caught a glimpse of her diner family in the audience. Their encouraging smiles, their proud faces. She saw the little girl from backstage, perched on the edge of her wheelchair in excitement. The moment her fingers touched the keys, something shifted. This wasn't the same nocturne she'd played in concert halls years ago. This was something new, a piece shaped by early mornings and late nights, by countless cups of coffee served, by the symphony of the diner and the quiet dreams of a waitress who never quite stopped being a musician. Her hands moved with the certainty of someone who knew both the delicacy of playing pianissimo and the strength needed to carry 4 plates at once. The music flowed like coffee into a regular's favorite cup, familiar, comforting, but somehow special every time. When she played the final notes, the silence lasted only a heartbeat before the applause began. Through tears, she saw Joey struggling to stand, leaning on his daughter but determined to give a standing ovation. The little girl in the wheelchair was beaming, her mother crying beside her. The diner crew whistled and cheered like they were at a baseball game. But it was the faces of the children in the audience that Maya would remember most, their eyes wide with possibility, seeing that music could come from the most unexpected places, that dreams didn't have to follow a single path. 3 months after the charity concert, Joey's Diner hummed with its usual morning energy. The coffee maker gurgled, toast popped up golden brown, and the bell of the door chimed as regulars filed in for breakfast. Maya moved through it all with practiced ease, but now there was something different about her stride, a lightness, a quiet confidence that hadn't been there before. The old upright piano tucked in the corner near the window was her surprise gift from the diner staff and regular customers. They'd all chipped in after the concert, hunting down a used one that still had good sound. "Every diner needs some entertainment," Pete had said with a wink as they wheeled it in one Sunday morning before opening. Now, during quiet afternoons between lunch and dinner rush, soft music would float through the diner. Sometimes it was classical pieces that made the bridge club ladies close their eyes in contentment. Other times it was simple tunes that had kids bobbing in their seats while eating pancakes. The music blended with the everyday sounds of the diner. the sizzle of the grill, the clink of cups, the warm chatter of conversation. The children's hospital had asked her to come back monthly to play for the young patients. She'd agreed immediately, rearranging her schedule to make it work. The little girl from the concert night was taking piano lessons now, right there in her hospital room. Sometimes Maya would bring her paper placemats from the diner to practice writing music notes. "Order up." Pete's voice rang out from the kitchen. Maya grabbed the plates with one hand, automatically checking their temperature and balance. A young couple at table 6 had been waiting for their breakfast. As she set down their plates, she noticed the woman's hands, calloused fingertips that marked her as a fellow pianist. "The music earlier was beautiful," the woman said shyly. "Bach's Prelude in C major, right? I heard it when we came in." Maya smiled, remembering how she used to feel awkward about being both a waitress and a musician. Now it felt as natural as breathing. "That's right. Would you like to play something? The piano's always open for guests who want to share their music." The woman's face lit up, and soon another melody joined the morning symphony of the diner. Maya watched as other customers tapped their feet or swayed gently while eating their breakfast. Mr. Lee, sitting at his usual table, caught her eye and raised his coffee cup in a small salute. Joey, back to his old self after recovery, had made music part of the diner's daily life. He even printed new menus with musical notes in the borders. The monthly coffee and classics morning had become so popular they had to add extra seating. Local music students would come to practice, nervous parents would bring their children for first recitals, and sometimes professional musicians passing through town would stop in to play a tune or two. Maya kept a small notebook by the register where customers could write their musical requests. The pages were filled with everything from Beethoven to Beatles, each request carrying its own story. Mrs. Chen always asked for Debussy when she was missing her homeland. The morning construction crew loved ragtime during their coffee breaks. The notebook became a diary of the diner's extended family, their lives and memories threaded together with music. During her breaks, Maya still slipped across to the Grand Hotel to play their baby grand. But it wasn't an escape anymore, just another stage where she could share her gift. Mr. Patel had officially hired her for their afternoon tea service twice a week, joking that his guests now planned their visits around her schedule. One quiet evening, after the dinner rush had ended and the last customer had left, Maya sat at the diner's piano. The keys were slightly worn now from months of love and use. As she played a gentle melody, she caught her reflection in the window. No longer split between waitress and pianist, but whole, complete in who she had become. Pete emerged from the kitchen, wiping his hands on his apron. "You know what I love about this place now," he said, settling into a booth nearby. "It's not just a diner anymore. It's like every plate of food comes with a side of dreams." Maya's fingers continued moving over the keys as she smiled. The music swelled softly, carrying the warmth of coffee and conversation, the rhythm of orders being called, the harmony of lives intersecting over shared meals and shared songs. She had finally found her truest performance, not in grand concert halls, but here, where every day brought its own kind of music and every song told a story of belonging.